just to touch on, what AccountScore actually do, we connect into the open banking regulatory rails, and we do that on consumer accounts as well as on business accounts. And then what we actually do is make sense of that data. We tend to work with financial services providers. We've been working in the SME lending space for the last 3 years, which was actually, to be honest, driven from our Indian business, because when we were looking at bank transaction data in India on consumer data, they kind of looked like micro businesses. So we actually started to work on our analytics and apply that to the SME market here in the UK. For us, with the open banking data, what we're able to do there is where SMEs are applying for finance, they can easily share their data in a digital way that means that they've got access to that finance more quickly. When I was working with one of the tier 1 banks, they told me it was on average a 112-day process from an application to get the money into the customer's account. So that's when we started looking at additional APIs. So, we work with Equifax to bring in their Equifax business insights. We bring in the company's house API. We bring in open accounting data as well, all just to try and ensure that we're adding value through that process and getting, when the customers do need finance, that they're able to access it in a more timely fashion. In terms of engagement that we're actually seeing, it is different. The amount of engagement you see on the consumer sharing of the data versus the business sharing of the data. And I think a lot of that, to be honest, is down to the customer experience. The app-to-app redirection on the consumer accounts when it's on my phone, is absolutely beautiful. And we see, from customers consenting to share their data to actually sharing, we see around about 85% of those customers go through that journey. If I'm sharing my business bank account, I can't do that on my phone. I have to go and I bank with NatWest, and so I have to log on to NatWest. And if you have 0 to 10 employees, the chances are that you've got somebody in you've got somebody that's your finance manager that actually is the one that knows your login, that I have no idea what my bank login is. So, it's all of those elements as well. And it makes it so it's slightly harder to share. So we actually only see around a completion rate of around about 50%, despite the fact seeing the same percentage of SMEs consent to share. It's actually getting through the process that is more challenging for the SME. You have to work with your audience, right? And every lender is after, whether it's in consumer lending or SME lender, they all have different risk appetites, So, it's about presenting to that customer, and so that customer goes, right, what is it that I want? And what do I need to do to get this? And then there is an element, and it may be cynical as well, but there is an element of it being a self-fulfilling prophecy that, if you're not willing to share your data, then there may be something going on. But what the lender needs to do then is give an alternative way of potentially getting data, even if it is the old school way of letting them upload a bank statement, for them to be able to have a look. What the aggregators have to do is they get the consent to have that data passed to them in the first instance, but then it's a GDPR point, not an AISP point, that lender then, the broker then has to have explicit consent to do that onward data share to the lending panel, and then they are able to do that. And if you're able, with the technology behind it on tokenization, it's not just data being sent down lots of different to lenders via APIs. You've got a customer reference as a token, the token gets passed, they hit the AISP's API or request their dashboard if they're doing manual underwriting, and then they are able to do that process. So I think there's been big progress, great progress actually, throughout 2020 in that aggregator market as to how they can capture the consent up front and then move that data on. That's what we do with those funding options, funding exchange, and those guys. There is an opportunity for them to understand what their business health, whatever jargon you want me to use, is actually like. How is their fitness kind of looking? And actually, by looking and by them understanding the transaction data, they could also understand how they are viewed from a perspective from a lender. So I think if we can gradually educate on the SME side as well, then I think it'll just be beneficial through to the future, and should hopefully feed in to the late payments piece as well. That if people really know how they're viewed,